So let's get started with React Query and let us see how React Query can help us to solving our problem. So first we need to add the dependency. I will install the dependency with yarn add at TanStack/React Query. So as you can see inside our package.json, we have a new entry for React Query. The version that I am using is version 5. So now we install the React Query. The next step would be to set it up. We need to wrap our app with a provider. So here I will go and inside our browser router here I will create a new query client provider. And I will wrap the whole thing here. And this requires a new client which we should initialize it. I will also React Query also provide this. I will call it as a query client, and I would say new query client, and I will pass this query client here, and I will also import this from React Query. And now we have wrapped our application with the query provider, and it allows us to use React Query. And the next step would be actually to go inside our app component, and here inside this fetch data I'm going to extract all of this code and put it inside a React Query hook. So the way that React Query works is like we define queries whenever we want to have a data from the API, and this will be called query, and whenever we want to change the data on the API we will call them mutation. So here for this one, for the list app.tsc and for the list component that are reading the data from the API, I will create a query, and for the create to do component which actually changes the to-dos list on the API and creates a new to-do, I will use a mutation. Here instead of calling the API inside a use effect, I will use React Query syntax, which is like this, data and is loading, and we have a function from query which is called use query, and here inside the use query I will pass an object, and this object should have a query key which acts as an unique index for this query. So I will call the query key here to-dos, and there will be a query function which will call it query fn, and this will be actually the API call that we have, which we will call the API, and then we only need the data part. So I will remove all of this use effect, and I also don't need the data here anymore. And because this is an asynchronous action, React Query also provides us a boolean which shows if this hook has been called, if this use query has been called, and if the app is still in loading, then I just simply return a paragraph with loading. So let's start our app, and let me move this function, and also first let me move this function inside the list component, because now we don't want to pass this as a parameter to the list component. So let me grab all of this code. And here I will change the list component to read the data from the and I will use it as a inside the map. Instead of reading them from properties, I'm going to read them from the hook. And to do will be type of the to do type. And now you can see that actually I have all of the to-dos, and which is amazing. And let us do a little bit cleanup about the project. Now I don't need this property type anymore. And also let us go to app.tsx file. We don't need all of this import. And now, as you can see, also the separation of the concept is really better. Now I only define a query client query client, and then inside the provider I will provide this. And inside the list component is calling this API and uses a query, and all of this use effect has been replaced, and this will be recognized as a key for this query. So what is the most interesting thing about React query is that in the next video, when I start editing the query and when I am starting to adding a new to-do to the to-do list, these to-dos will be used as a unique key. And whenever that inside the create component we are doing a mutation and we are updating this key, now React query knows that the key, something regarding this key has been happened, and then it automatically re-renders the component, so the list component can be notified about that. So let us commit our change. Let us commit our changes, and then let us jump to the next video. I will call this using React query to fetch to-dos list.